Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and this time we've got the pleasure of watching Googles from the North American server playing in the Tier 8 British tank destroyer, the AT-15. Not to be confused with the AT-15A, which is a Tier 7 premium British tank destroyer, which came after this vehicle, at least I believe. Now, I haven't featured this tank on this channel in, gosh, over 3 years. The only time was when I did a full tank review on the AT-15. So what do you guys need to know about it? Well, it's certainly not fast. Top speed limit 20 kilometers an hour, and its power to weight ratio is far from impressive, just under 11, and its ground resistance is thoroughly mediocre. So yeah, this thing is very slow indeed. A lot like its predecessor, the 87, and also the vehicle after it, the Tortoise. There's kind of a running trend of really poor mobility with these British tank destroyers. But this uses the same 83.4mm, aka a 20-pounder, as the 87. So you might be saying, what, it's got the same gun as a Tier 7 British tank destroyer? Well, that doesn't sound very impressive. And also, 1,450 hit points sounds like a lot, right? That's a huge amount. That's 45% more than, for example, an ISU 152, which I think has just over 1,000 hit points, right? But the 87 had 1,250 hit points, which is a lot for a Tier 7 tank destroyer. It's one of the reasons why it's one of my favorite vehicles, probably tank destroyer wise, in the game. I think the 87 is a hidden gem that a lot of people overlook, especially considering the rate of fire on that tank is rather scary as well. But that's no different to the AT-15. This tank fires 12 rounds a minute. We're talking about over 2,750 DPM in this tank. And the alpha damage, while not very impressive at 230, when you consider that other tanks like the Ferdinand gets 490 alpha damage, and the ISU 152 at Tier 8 gets 750 alpha damage, it doesn't make that 230 sound very impressive. In fact, it makes it sound like a gigantic weakness of the vehicle. But what this tank does is keep on firing. Look at this rate of fire, as Googles wasn't able to use it. Oh, that was a bit anticlimactic, wasn't it? Oh, look at this great rate of fire. Oh, he couldn't use it. Oh well. You guys will get to see what this rate of fire does later on. Another thing that's a bit disappointing about this tank is the penetration. 226mm of penetration. Ferdinand again gets about 248, and I think the ISU 152 gets 286. And even the competition for the AT-15, the Charioteer, the turreted British Tier 8 tank destroyer, has, I think, 268mm of APCR penetration. One thing that really interests me about this tank, however, or shall I say about this replay, however, is the fact that Googles lost his commander and then his gunner to the SU-152 that he frankly couldn't see. It was a very interesting decision by Googles to, in fact, not heal his commander, because that means that he couldn't see the SU-152, and then the SU-152 put 2 high explosives into his tank, forcing him to use his medkit finally on the gunner. But some good marksmanship and a crazy rate of fire on this tank shuts down the SU-152, getting a little bit of revenge on that Tier 7 Soviet tank destroyer. But Googles, for the rest of this replay, is going to be as blind as a blat. As blind as a blat. Even as blind as a bat, hey? But how many of you have been in this kind of situation before, where your commander's dead? Can you still have an effective role in the battle? Well, obviously, Googles needs to try and keep his friends alive for as long as possible, because it's most likely that even with his binoculars set up, that he possibly won't spot the IS-3 unless the IS-3 fires at him. And it's quite likely to be maybe the IS, or even possibly the Ferdinand back here, who is in fact seeing that IS-3. So right now, look at his view range. Even with binocular setup, he cannot even see that E-25, who is perhaps only 300 meters away from him. With binoculars activated, I think his view range probably goes up to about 240, 250 meters right now. Oh gosh, unfortunate there that the shell didn't go into the T-25 too. The accuracy on this tank is lovely, by the way. 0.3, one of the most accurate tank destroyers in the game. And so, really what you find with the AT-15 is that you've got the same gun as the AT-7. Your health hasn't really increased that much. But what you do have is just a much better 20-pounder setup on this tank than it was on the AT-7. And we're talking about gun arc. 25 degrees to the right, 25 degrees to the left. Look at this fantastic gun arc on this tank. Look how far it can turn its gun to the right and to the left. It just makes it very flexible, a lot like the Tier 9 British tank destroyer, the Tortoise. It also has great gun depression, 10 degrees of depression and 10 degrees of elevation. That is so much better than on the 87. What you find with the 87 is that you really want to be on a map like Runeberg, like Siegfried Line, like Himmelsdorf, and putting your gun around the corner, because remember, on the 87 your gun is situated on the right hand side of the tank, whereas on the 8015 your gun is situated in the center. Just check out this rate of fire and what he is going to do to the IS here. The IS repairs his tracks. Good job, the Sturmil shuts him down, and so that allows Googles to go after the Panther here. The Panther rams the Sturmil, doing 125 damage. Didn't quite go all in on that ram, but he finishes him off as he gets his flank. But there you go. 12 rounds a minute, including a gun rammer, but it doesn't look like Googles is maybe using vents on this tank, which is quite surprising, but maybe he wants to play as a bit of a mid to long range sniper, or perhaps he just didn't have the credits to be able to invest in the ventilation that this tank has, and he shuts down the Panther before he manages to get his flank. Oh, awful shot there onto the T-25-2, unfortunate, but Googles is under a lot of pressure right now, and that's because when you're in a non-turreted tank destroyer, the risk of the enemies getting your flank is just horrendous. If that T-25-2 had got to the side of the AT-15, it's just a big tasty snack. As soon as you get to this part, this vehicle does not have the traverse speed to... It doesn't have the traverse speed to turn the tank. It doesn't have the top speed to get forwards into cover. It doesn't even have the reverse speed at 10 kilometers an hour to deal with anything. And so what Googles has to do is to track his opponents. Will he hit the track on the Comet? Beautiful shot in there, shutting down the Tier 7 British medium tank, and he just puts another round in, and this is where you have to be in your AT-15. You have to track your opponents and just keep them locked down. Now, unfortunately for him, his Ferdinand falls, and doubly bad is the fact that Ferdinand just died after the Comet did, which means that Googles is not in contention now for a Kolobanov's medal, instead having a 1 versus 4. But I'm sure he doesn't really mind having to deal with this 1 versus 4, because he's still got his work cut out for him. He doesn't have a commander. He can't see pretty much more than 200 meters away from his tank when we also take into account the enemy's camo rating. This is going to be very awkward indeed. But Googles is on 5 kills and 5,000 damage. That is a monster of a game for an AT-15. And he should be happy with the fact that even if he was to suck out now, it's very likely that he's going to get the high caliber medal. But then again, this is the battle of the top guns. Look at this T-69 on the enemy team. He's on 5 kills as well. And will Jay on the enemy team be able to shut down Googles? Okay, Googles finally spots the T-69, and it actually looks like that T-69 is using the T-71's gun, because he's firing APCR rounds at him as standard. So that means he's got 150 alpha damage, 175 millimeters of penetration, I believe, but great shell velocity. The IS-3 makes a bit of a mistake there. I think he thought that Googles was going to be turning to go after the T-69, and that he would be able to put in a nice soft shot into the AT-15, and he loaded high explosive rounds because he was bouncing all of his AP rounds earlier on. He does 117. Luckily, no more crew die for Googles, and now he gets to turn his attention to the T-69. Now we've got to be thinking about what the Super Pershing and the Black Prince are doing right now. They're very likely to be going this way, and also perhaps this way to catch Googles, so he's got to cover the rear of his tank. And indeed, a shell comes in from we don't really know where, because he can't see 200 meters in front of him. He's as blind as a bat right now. Will he be able to find this T-69? The T-69 is probably reloading, waiting to try and get the AT-15 to come closer to try and get the side of his tank. But Googles puts in a fantastic shot, tracking another tank. Beautiful play. Exactly what you have to do in your British tank destroyers. Lock your opponents down and punish them with your DPM. Fantastic play here by Googles. Great marksmanship using that 0.3 accuracy to put a good one there into the T-69, although you don't really need 0.39 accuracy to hit that shot probably in close quarters. So Googles can't see either Super Pershing or the Black Prince that are ricocheting shells off him. Luckily, he only took 2 rounds from the T-69 there, and he was probably only a second away from dying. Looks like that T-69 knows about the weak points of the AT-15, and that is directly at the gun, or alternatively, putting rounds into the machine gun port up here, and it looks like he put probably 2 rounds up there. The Black Prince appears on full health, the Super Pershing on 55% of his hit points. This is still going to be a tricky situation. It's sudden death right now. If Googles gets penetrated by one round from the Super Pershing or the Black Prince, it's game over. He's on 7 kills, 6,300 damage. Oh gosh, he missed a shot. He has also run out of AP rounds. He's had to kick so much ass this game, and now he's using those APCR rounds, upping the penetration from 226 to 258. One more into the top of the Super Pershing should do it right now. Will he be able to handle it? Yes, he does. And you know what? Let's just change the camera angle right now. And let's see what in hell's name this Black Prince is shooting at. Will he find the weak point on top of Googles' vehicle? Looks like he's aiming for it. He tries to shoot one straight through the gun manlet. Doesn't really work out. Now he's going for the weak point on top of the tank. He ricochets off, however. Will he be able to find the other side? He's going to try and shoot the machine gun port on the right-hand side of the tank. Now down to 500, 323 hit points. Googles is just punishing him right now. And let's see that satisfying moment at the end of the game for Googles as he finishes off the 1 versus 4, picking up his 9th kill and 8,420 damage. That is the second highest damage game of all time in the Tier 8 British tank destroyer. So what a result here for Googles. There's no doubt that the AT-15 has limited capabilities to really show off, but Googles did everything that you really need to do in this tank and all of your non-turreted British tank destroyers to be successful, i.e. lock down your opponent's tracks, because otherwise what's the point of having that great rate of fire if they're going to get your side? Just keep pushing forwards, albeit slowly, and eliminate your enemies one by one in order of, I guess, their threat. So how can you avoid looking helpless like this Black Prince and the Super Pershing at the end of the game, who pretty much lost all of their hit points to not even do 100 damage to the AT-15? Well, number one, just put a round in here. There's actually no armor behind this spaced part of armor over the gun. That's an easy pen for most tanks, especially if he's aiming down on your hull armor. Next, if you've got about 150 millimeters of penetration, just shoot up here and you're easily going to be able to do that. But one thing you got to watch out for is that when you're like the Black Prince here and you're a bit lower down than the AT-15, it can be quite challenging to shoot up at it, especially if you want to he ricocheted off this part, or maybe you go and hit this location. And one thing that a skilled AT-15 driver will do is he will actually angle his tank slightly like this to be able to use this part of the armor to block this part of the vehicle. And alternatively, if you have about 225 millimeters of penetration, you can also shoot this little machine gun here. But anyway, let's just take a quick look at the post-game stats. So what a result here for Googles. He managed to pick up a variety of hero medals here. Firstly, the Spartan medal for ricocheting a shot when he's on 10% or less hit points. Cool-headed for surviving at least 10 ricochets in a row. The Radley Walters medal for the 9 kills he picked up in this game. Unsurprisingly, a high caliber, and boy, what a high caliber this was. 8,400 damage in a tier 8 tank. And as I mentioned, this is the second highest damage that anyone has ever been able to do in an AT-15, as well as also a steel wall medal. And how much did he manage to block this game? Whoa, 5,400. That's enough to kill him nearly 4 times over. And Googles nets himself 2,099 base experience points. What a result. That was for a triple. Wow, looks like the North American server had a triple weekend. 10,000 experience triple, 100,000 credits profit, but I expect he's going to lose a lot of credits. Whoa, he lost 10,000 credits because he just ran out of AP rounds. It's not often that you're going to have to do half of that damage. Half of that damage is a fantastic game in the AT-15, let alone doing that. And he didn't fire any of the APCR rounds until he literally ran out of AP. So Googles, thank you so much for uploading this on the replays.QuickyBaby.com website. You really showed how to play British tank destroyers. They might not be the most complicated things to play, but you have to nail the basics, and you did exactly that. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider giving it a like. It really helps the channel out. And if you want to see my full tank review on the AT-15, then simply click through up here or use that more info icon in the top right hand corner of your screen. And let me know in the comments down below what you guys think about the non-turreted British tank destroyers. Do you think they're competitive? Do you really like them? Are any of you massive fans out there? Or maybe for some of you it was the most painful grind on your way to the absolute troll that is the FV215B with 183mm Hesh rounds. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.